Good afternoon to you. 5:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Always appreciate your contributions. New York Post headline this weekend, Kamala Harris's stepdaughter, Ella Emhoff, is publicly raising money for a relief group allegedly tied to the October 7th terrorist attack on Israel. Well, that's par for the course for the Harris family. They constantly raise money for the bad guys. Let's bring in the author of that piece, the journalist John Levine is here, political reporter for the New York Post. Sir, good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
What is going on here? This is the model daughter, right?
Yeah, this is Kamala Harris's stepdaughter. It's actually the daughter of Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, and his first wife. Mm-hmm. And she's the coiner of the term Momala, and she is a model, allegedly. And I just saw on her Instagram page that she was raising money for UNRWA, which is an acronym for United Nations Relief and Works Agency in Palestine. It's actually a much longer acronym than that. But the United States used to give money to UNRWA, and then President Trump cut the money when he took over because he said UNRWA, there was a lot of evidence that UNRWA funded Hamas terrorism. The money was restored when President Biden took office. But then only a few months ago, or even maybe a few weeks ago, the U.S. government cut off money to UNRWA after Israel presented very convincing evidence that members of that organization were actively involved in the October 7th massacre in that country. And now, lo and behold, you have the vice president's stepdaughter actively soliciting donations for this group, which you say allegedly involved. You know, this is a group that, it is alleged, but it's credible enough where the United States has cut funding.
Yes.
So it's pretty convincing stuff.
And you note in your reporting that as many as 450 UNRWA workers are members of extremist groups in the Gaza Strip, according to Israel. They've been, of course, monitoring this for their own protection. So hundreds of people implicated here to the point that even the Biden administration says, okay, we have to back off of this.
Right. It's not a few bad apples. It's like UNRWA is the largest employer in Gaza, and they're in everything. You know, there are reports of Israeli hostages being held in the home of an UNRWA teacher. And if you look at like the schools in Gaza where they teach the kids from, the cradle that you need to hate Jews and kill Israelis, these are schools that are run by UNRWA. The problems with UNRWA have been around for years, and Israel's known about them for years. There's an amazing nonprofit, which I quoted in this story called UN Watch, that has documented abuses from UNRWA forever, for as old as time. And it's just unfortunate that there are political reasons why, especially Democrats, just want to continue funding this group, and they kind of have a monopoly on aid distribution.
So
it's very unfortunate.
So a member of Kamala Harris's family posts this. You see it, and then you decide, well, that's an important story. She's the stepdaughter of the vice president of the United States. What happens next?
Well, I mean, I reached out to the White House, and I was like, I thought we cut funding to UNRWA. Why is the daughter of the vice president raising money for UNRWA? And then, that got zapped from her Instagram profile pretty quick. But it was just hanging out in plain sight. I think Instagram's algorithm put a post of hers in my news feed or something, and I just clicked her profile, and I noticed it, and I was like, oh, that's a thing.
That is something. So do you think Facebook was trying to help you out in your reporting here?
I don't know. Maybe Meta was trying to send me a smoke signal. No,
yeah.
But, I'm glad it was swiftly corrected, because the second family should not be raising money for a terrorist organization.
No, not at all.
It's bad enough that we gave them all those billions before we cut the aid.
Well, this is also par for the course. I mentioned at the outset in the open that Kamala Harris was supporting the Minnesota Freedom Fund back in 2020, encouraging people to donate to a group that would spring out of jail, the people who were destroying the state of Minnesota. So this is actually kind of become a common feature for this family.
It runs in the family, absolutely. And, we have to remember, Joe Biden is the oldest president in American history. She is a heartbeat away from the Oval Office. And if, for whatever reason, Joe Biden did not run for re-election, she would be the very obvious natural successor. So it's a clear indication of where the Democratic Party is going.
Yes.
Because as bad as Joe Biden has been on a number of Israel issues, he is still unquestionably the best of the Democrats when it comes to Israel stuff. Once we get into the next generation, the Kamalas and the Pete Buttigieg's,
yes,
it's going to get real interesting.
Now, the one difference I will say between these two fundraisers that members of Kamala's family have advanced is Kamala never deleted her support for the Minnesota Freedom Fund, the bail fund for the criminals there who were wrecking that state. But they did have this stepdaughter, Ella Emhoff, remove that Instagram post. Why do you think it was different?
Well, I think the issue is that the United States government has openly suggested that UNRWA was involved in October 7th.
Yes.
And I think there is a line at which you just cannot contravene official U.S. policy when you're the second family. But when it comes to Minnesota Freedom Fund, that is pretty much the Democratic policy. I don't think Kamala Harris would say that was a mistake. And more importantly, there is not a media class that would hold her accountable for that action. So she has no reason to take it down or even note it anywhere. No, she'll never even get asked a question about it ever. And if she did, she would just laugh and say, "Why are you asking me this?" and just walk away.
I know. And if among the only people who would ask would be your colleague Stephen Nelson or something. And,
right, exactly. A very small group of they just laugh. Oh, that's another right-wing reporter question. Every now and then you would see Nancy Pelosi on CNN, and every now and then Wolf Blitzer would ask her a real question, and she would make this face, like a dog just took a crap on the floor. How dare you speak to me that way? Yeah. And the leaders of the Democratic Party are not used to questions like that. So why are you raising money to bail out these criminals? And it's of course you would ask that.
And of course,
not legitimate.
And if I recall correctly, Nancy Pelosi probably has a lot of experience making that face because people do crap in front of her house in San Francisco. So she's accustomed to making that face. Just not with the media, not very often. John Levine from the New York Post, thank you very much. I really appreciate your reporting and your conversation with me today, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That's John Levine over at the New York Post. An excellent, important report on, that's just how brazen our ruling class is. The vice president's family is raising money for a terror organization. Oh, whoops. And they just delete the post and then pretend like the whole thing will go away. It's just a George Orwell novel. Write down the memory hole. Pretend it never existed. Let's move on. But for now, there are still reporters out there, some, John Levine being among them, who's willing to document this. Now, Kamala. The problem of Kamala. How do you solve a problem like Kamala Harris? Well, over at the Washington Post, they have an idea today. It's time for Kamala Harris to quit, which I wholeheartedly agree, but there's a lot of other people who need to join her on that bus. All aboard. Head on out. Kathleen Parker is a columnist for the Washington Post, writes this weekend, for the country's sake, Vice President Harris should step aside. Now, I was super excited to read this piece because I was like, man, how is she going to justify this to her very left-wing reading audience who's going to be very upset that anyone at the Washington Post would say this? And I will say this piece is all over the place. It's almost like she's like, she wants Kamala to go, but she wants to pay her some compliments, and then she wants to insult her, and then she has got a new job idea for her. And it's honestly the most tortured column you're going to see in the Washington Post in a long time. But I'll read a part of it for you. They say, Kathleen Parker says this, the Democratic Party's indulgence of identity politics has proved successful in building a diverse organization. Well, right away, that's a lie. It's a monolithic organization with a singular point of view, and if you stray from it, you will be destroyed. That is their policy. This is why feminists have no place. Traditional feminists have no place in the Democrat Party anymore. Oh, you believe women are a thing? Sorry, you're out. You're a trans exclusionary radical feminist. That's what they say about those women. You're a TERF. So they're not a diverse organization, actually. They don't welcome diversity. They all think the same. They all graduate from the same schools. And they'd like you to stay out of the conversation. They've proved successful in building a diverse organization. But its strategy of courting and pandering to minority voters is the road to ruin, says Kathleen Parker. In 2020, Joe Biden's promise to tap a woman as his vice president, along with Representative James E. Clyburn's election-altering endorsement in South Carolina, paved Biden's way to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. In other words, identity politics. That's why Biden got there. The old white guy, he got there because of identity politics. His history-making selection of the telegenic Kamala D. Harris might prove to be his downfall in 2024. Do you think Kamala Harris is telegenic? You ever thought that to yourself? You know what telegenic is? When you say someone's telegenic, it means that they're beautiful, captivating, that you see them on TV and they translate so well. The image of them is impressive. Is she telegenic? No. Biden has had enough fall downs to make voters worry, she writes. Harris's resume was impressive, she claims. A former California attorney general and a sitting U.S. senator. She seemed to have been created by central casting. Or was it artificial intelligence? As the first black woman and the first woman of Asian descent to be nominated for vice president, she was a doubleheader. But her evolving beliefs undercut that appeal. As a presidential candidate in 2020, she followed the Democratic playbook on issues, except when she raised her hand in support of eliminating private health insurance. Sorry, that is the Democrat playbook. They want to remove private health insurance. She also managed to imply that Biden was racist and segregationist. She did do that, citing his long ago stance against student busing. It'd be pretty interesting if he had a recent stance against student busing. In her famous debate rebuke of Biden, she said she was one of the little black girls on one of those buses. Her touche was short-lived. Harris ended her campaign in December of 2019, citing a lack of financial resources. Next thing we knew, she was moving into the Naval Observatory. Kathleen Parker writes this. This is a great line. She was a colossal failure as border czar, a position she held briefly and otherwise seemed to have gone undercover. I'm sorry, wait a second. Are you as confused by that line as I am? When was she relieved of her job as border czar? When did that happen? Did you miss that news cycle? I missed that entirely. Now, obviously, she's never in any way been meaningfully attentive to the border. She's not actually doing it. She's angry that she even has the assignment. The border's not my problem. And then when you're like, well, what are you working on? What is it, root causes? I'm working on root causes of the, quote, migration crisis. How's that going? Not well. Not well at all. The whole planet is coming to the country, invading, and hasn't slowed down. So not really sure what you're working on. But if you're working on it, you're failing. And so Kathleen Parker says that the being border czar was, quote, a position she held briefly. That would be news to, I think, even the Washington Post newsroom. When did that come out? Whatever the reasons, she goes on, it has seemed that Harris's role was to be quiet, lest she embarrass her boss with sometimes inane, rambling remarks and a laugh that erupts from nowhere about nothing obvious to others. Ooh, here we go. Now we're getting somewhere. And then she goes back again. This is the schizophrenic nature of this column. I do, however, relish the thought of her face-to-face with Vladimir Putin and subtly cackling at a linchpin moment during nuclear arms discussions. What? So she just was lamenting her inane, rambling remarks and her weird, inappropriate laughter. And then she said, I would love for her to be inappropriately laughing in Vladimir Putin's face during a nuclear arms discussion. First of all, what? And second of all, what? Yeah, a high-stake nuclear arms discussion will send in the incoherent vice president of the United States. That sounds great. That sounds really great. The Kamala conundrum comes down to this, says Kathleen Parker. She was picked because she was black, capital B, in the Washington Post, and female, lowercase f, for now. A combo tantamount to job security. Now that she has become a burden to the Democratic ticket, Biden can't fire her. He can't risk alienating his base, full stop. The seriousness of this situation can't be overstated. Biden's diminishing faculties, notwithstanding his relatively successful State of the Union address, and his increasing physical frailty, are concerning. She says every honest person knows he's not in top form. A recent New York Times poll found that 73% of registered voters believe Biden is too old to be the nation's top executive. This includes 61% of those who voted for him in 2020. Holy cow. That's a big number. Yeah. She goes on. She says Kamala Harris is not doing well. Here, I'll tell you what. I'll wrap this up for you on the other side of the traffic because this is a doozy. She's got a big job idea for Kamala Harris, and it's way more dangerous than Vice President of the United States. This is the worst possible advice you could give to Biden and company. I'll share it with you in a moment. It's 5:21 now. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I hope you had a nice St. Patrick's Day weekend. Joe Biden, I don't know. It sounds like he kind of hit the bottle or something. I mean, he always sounds like this. He was slurring a lot at an event yesterday for St. Patrick's Day.
Great to have you here, and it's very happy to see Northern Ireland's Executive Assembly reinstated last month. Now Northern Ireland is a fully functioning government again, and I didn't admit your colleague. Young people in Northern Ireland represent the great peace dividend of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah, you followed all that? Quick, for $5, repeat every word. Yeah, come on. Biden also had a please clap moment yesterday.
Ireland now is one of the top 10 investors in the United States economy, and our country stand proudly for liberty and against tyranny. We stand together and oppose Russia's brutal war of aggression in Ukraine. You can clap for that, please.
You can clap for that, please. Or as Jeb Bush would say.
Please clap.
Please, I beg you, clap. Please. My campaign's dying. So is Joe's, by the way. Joe's got Jeb Bush energy right now for his campaign. So that's what's been going on. I was telling you a bit earlier about Don Lemon's hilarious interview with Elon Musk. Elon Musk did not enjoy it, but he definitely taught Don Lemon a lot, which is not that surprising. I guess maybe if Don Lemon opened his mind, he'd probably learn something from every conversation he has with other people. But he doesn't. His mind is completely closed. It's too bad. Here is Don Lemon and Elon Musk talking about whether Twitter has an obligation to, quote, moderate hate speech. This would be censor to remove things that Don Lemon doesn't like.
You recently called content moderation, though, a digital chastity belt. Do you think that...
It's a good line.
Do you believe that X and you have some responsibility to moderate hate speech on the platform?
I think we have a responsibility to adhere to the law, and we have a responsibility to be transparent about when things are shown, why they're shown. That's why we open source our algorithm. I think once you start going beyond the law, now you're putting your thumb on the scale. And we don't want to put our thumb on the scale.
It doesn't concern you that hate speech has gone. Research shows that it's gone up on the platform since you took over. That's not concerning to you?
I believe that.
Can you cite some research for me? When you say research has shown, what does that mean?
That's false. In fact, the research that I've seen says it went down.
The study from the Institute of Strategic Dialogue found that anti-Semitic tweets...
The study from the Institute for Strategic Dialogue. How good faith do you think that particular organization is? The study for the Institute of Strategic Dialogue? Come on.
It's doubled from June 22 to February 2023. One study reported that as many as 86% of the posts reported for hateful content remained up after being reported. Hate speech on the platform is up.
So what they will typically do is they will count the number.
The logic, by the way, built into that question is completely flawed. So they reported stuff, and then a lot of it didn't get taken down. Well, then maybe they were wrong about whether or not it should have been taken down. Have you considered that? Or do you just accept at the outset that whatever they assert is, quote, hate speech needs to be banished from all human existence?
22 to February 2023, one study reported that as many as 86% of the posts reported for hateful content remained up after being reported.
I mean, if you write vote for Trump on Twitter and a lefty reports it as hateful speech and it doesn't get removed, does that fall into the study?
Hate speech on the platform is up.
So what they will typically do is they will count the number of posts, but not count the number of views. So what matters is, was that post given high visibility, or what did like one person see it? And if you look at the number of views of how
in other words, like what's the actual impact of that expression?
How many times was hate content viewed on our platform? It is down substantially.
Yeah. Well, that's not what the study shows. And you said you like transparency. I'm going to show you.
Did you hear the hand wave? That's not what the study shows. So anyway, you see, you like transparency. This is the same garbage he was doing on CNN. And he's basically pantomiming the same way that a lot of these lefties talk on these big legacy news outlets. Once they're confronted with countervailing evidence, once it's demonstrated they were wrong in their facts, instead they just hand wave it. Well, that's not what the study said. The experts say something different. Anyway, let's move on. And now they don't want to litigate it anymore because they realize that they've lost. And they don't take it. What What Don Lemon is doing is he's not engaging in a fact-finding mission. That's what journalists are supposed to do, where you suss things out, you figure out what's true, you figure out whether or not your preconceived notions are wrong, you correct if they are. This is what you're supposed to do. But what Don Lemon sees this as is an opportunity to make himself look good for the audience he really cares about, which are left-wingers who hate Trump, hate Elon Musk. This is about, this is a peacock moment. This is not in any way designed to edify the public or teach you anything or to even suss out what's true.
That was what the study shows. And you said you like transparency. I'm going to show you this. And
Don, you can get a study that will tell you whatever you want.
Yeah, you can get a study that'll tell you whatever you want. And that's true. That's totally true. The left pays all sorts of organizations to manipulate data to come out with findings that they prefer, and then they send them off to the media. The media runs with them totally uncritically, and then they're used as the basis for public policy. They will censor the American people because this study from this random organization with an anodyne name has concluded that the American people are using their free speech too much. So therefore they need to be censored. It's getting in the way of government policy, therefore you should communicate less, or you should have less access to people who communicate in a way that conflicts with government policy. It's all a scam. It's a total scam. So here, Don keeps going, of course, as he so often does.
If you look at those anti-Semitic and racist tropes and tweets, and as of this morning, they're still on X. And from your own content policy, these posts should have been...
By the way, he's not showing tweets from Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar here. That's not what he's actually showing to Elon Musk. He's showing other random Twitter users.
Been deleted. So why haven't they been deleted? Why are they still there? Did you...
We delete things if they are illegal.
But these have been up there for a while.
Are they illegal?
They're not illegal, but they're hateful, and they can lead to violence.
Oh,
As
boy.
I just read to you, the shooters, in all of these mass shootings, attributed social media to radicalizing.
So Don, you...
So let me just pause on this concept right here, which is that a shooter will express an ideology typically through these manifestos. That's how we usually find out, because usually the shooter's dead by the end of the crime. And so then we're left to flipping through the pages of a manifesto to figure out what they believe. Why did they do this? What was the motivation? Of course, that's an obvious question. And Don Lemon's conclusion from those manifestos is that if, quote, right-wing views are being expressed, if these extreme views are being expressed, by saying them, you are motivating shooters who then go out and commit these horrific crimes. So you're basically just as guilty as they are. This is the Don Lemon logic here. Now, notice he doesn't actually apply that to left-wing views at all, or what he considers left-wing views, because I would argue that all of this identitarian garbage is left-wing. The stuff where you literally identify people on the basis of their race or their religion, and you think that summarizes them entirely in their worldviews. Yeah, that's like that's what the left does. That's what the left does. Anti-Semitism is running rampant right now on the American left. And Don Lemon's like, we're not stopping the anti-Semites. Mm-hmm. And also, as we've talked about with, for instance, John Lott, who's dug into this a lot of these shooters are eco-terrorists. They usually claim that a lot of them claim that the reason that they went in and shot up all these people is because there's too many people on Earth and we need to get rid of them. And it's crazy stuff, but it's crazy left-wing claptrap. And that, of course, doesn't feature very prominently in any of the news coverage of these shooters. But that does happen. And then, of course, you have, like, the Nashville shooter, who's a transgender person attacking a Christian church and school, and then the manifesto is literally buried, so we can never see what the underlying motivations were, right? Heck, Joe Biden, I played audio earlier for you, routinely refers to his political opponents as extremists, MAGA extremists. The left has been doing this for years. They've been demonizing the right, their political opponents, the people they face on the ballot, and the people who would vote for the people who they face on the ballot. They demonize them to the point that they cast them in the eyes of their base as irredeemably evil. They're demons on earth. These right-wingers, they're Hitler. They're all Hitler. And then sometimes these lefties take them so seriously that they try and kill conservatives and Republican lawmakers. We saw an attack by a Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer on a baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia, carrying a list in his pocket of Republican congressmen, asking one of those congressmen, hey, are these Republicans or Democrats? That congressman responds, oh, it's Republicans. We're just practicing baseball. He takes his gun out and he opens fire, attempting to slaughter them. Their lives only saved by the good guys with guns, the Capitol police officers who were there to protect them. Steve Scalise made it out of that grievous wounding. So what is that? Is Don Lemon going after Biden for inflaming those types of attacks? What about when a United States Supreme Court justice by the name of Brett Kavanaugh has to have armed security outside of his house, and thankfully they capture a man seeking to assassinate him, doing everything he can to quiet his footsteps, carrying weapons with him, prepared to assassinate a sitting Supreme Court justice. You have left-wing lawmakers who've been urging their base to go after these justices, to go outside of their homes, to violate the law, to harass them into compliance for fear of the Dobbs decision, which leaked from the Supreme Court in the first place. They're out of control. And Don Lemon's not there to, we got to stop that. That's not what he's doing at all. He's angry that Elon Musk allows all sorts of views, including ugly views, to exist on that platform, on Twitter, on X now, and for people to be able to talk to one another and to express things like, I think your view is stupid. I think that is inhuman. You shouldn't express that. Don Lemon doesn't like that world. Don Lemon wants a world that is censored completely. And so he's grumpy here, and he's like going after Elon Musk for this.
Love censorship is where.
But Musk, of course, is running circles around him because Don is a lot dumber than Elon.
No, I don't love censorship.
Then why are you asking?
I believe in moderation, but I don't believe in
censorship. Moderation is a propaganda word for censorship.
But don't you think free speech is one thing, right? Or not,
Look, if something's illegal, we're going to take it down. If it's not illegal, then we're putting our thumb on the scale and we're being censors.
You're putting your thumb on the scale for moderating hate speech. I mean, you don't put out child pornography. That's not.
It's illegal.
Some people would say that's considered censorship. I'm just saying.
Wait, hold up. Was Don Lemon under the impression up until this very moment that child porn is A-okay and that it's totally legal? Are you listening to this? His counterpoint, so when Musk says, yeah, if it's illegal, we don't allow it, obviously. If it's illegal, we don't allow it on the platform. But beyond that, we're not putting our finger on the scale. And Don Lemon goes, but, what about child porn? Some people would say child porn is totally fine. That is a very suspicious answer, or at least interjection by Don Lemon. What the heck is that?
If it's not illegal, then we're putting our thumb on the scale and we're being censors.
You're putting your thumb on the scale for moderating hate speech. I mean, you don't put out child pornography. That's not.
It's illegal.
Some people would say that's considered censorship. I'm just saying.
No, I literally.
Do you think he realized how stupid that sounded? Even Don Lemon, do you think he realized in that moment? He was like, I'm just saying. He tried to move on quickly.
Don, I literally said, if something is legal, okay, we will obviously remove it.
Okay.
But if it is not legal, the laws in this country are put forward by the citizens. We're a democracy. If those laws are put in place by the people, we adhere to those laws.
Don has no idea what to do with this. He does. Because Elon, that's airtight, what Elon Musk said. Let me get Alan and Gambrels in here. He's line 2. Alan, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Thank you, Vince. I really appreciate it. It was really interesting to watch. I should say hear Elon Musk as an African-American school Don Lemon on the constitutionality and how, especially when we were talking about what you had there earlier about representation and numbers and so forth.
Yes.
I would absolutely love to have a follow-up conversation between the two of them on the 17th Amendment and where we're at now with the Senate. It's just amazing that it's crazy that Don was baited into, and I say baited incorrectly, but that he was drawn into a discussion that he could not counter when we're talking about illegals and the challenges to the census and so forth, which is completely unconstitutional.
So anyway, I want people to know, but Alan, let me pause for a moment. I want people to know what you're talking about because not everyone's heard the whole show. So there was another portion I played of the interview where Elon Musk and Don Lemon are talking, and Don's like, well, you keep talking about illegal immigrants affecting the right to vote, but they're he says undocumented, whatever, immigrants. He said undocumented immigrants, they can't vote, he says. But Elon points out very wisely, he's like, but wait a second, the census counts human bodies. And when it counts human bodies, it apportions members of Congress based on that. And the Electoral College is actually arranged like that. And Don Lemon didn't have any answer to it. He was totally confused by it, which, Alan, that told me a lot, which is that under normal circumstances, if you're a talented ideological debater, even if you want to take a position strongly, you have to assess what the other person might say. You have to think through what the debate could be so you're ready for that. Don had clearly put zero thought into that arrangement, and he didn't know what to do with it, did he?
No, and it was a perfect example of where Don Lemon brought a pocket knife to a gunfight because he was overmatched intellectually by the ramifications of what the discussion is.
Totally, big time. And this is why, Alan, I tweeted earlier, or X'd earlier, that I think that the only mistake Elon Musk has made here is cutting off Don Lemon from a deal. I think he should bring him back, and the two of them should do a show together, and every day Elon Musk should teach Don Lemon something new. I would watch that every day. Appointment viewing.
I swear a great debate would be the 17th Amendment, because it would be, again, bringing a pocket knife to a gunfight as to the body politics today and how it has been morphed.
The 17th Amendment, when we decided to give the election of senators directly to the American people and away from state legislatures.
Correct.
Yeah, it'd be
correct.
Critical. Yeah, I think it's a good conversation to have. All right, Alan, thank you very much. Let's check.
I've never really heard people discuss macroeconomics in terms of bloodbaths.
Yeah, that's Joe Scarborough this morning. Dan Goldman said today, since when does anybody use the term bloodbath related to economic problems? All credit to a guy called Jason Robertson on X. He notes in Webster's, it's actually the second definition. It says the first is a great slaughter. The second is a major economic disaster. Oh, it's literally in the dictionary. These leftists stepping on rakes, taking them to the face every day. The great one, Mark Levin, up next.